Hi, this is Chris Newsom. Welcome to the Root Cause Analysis podcast, where we'll take our listeners right to the heart of the important EHS issues. We're coming to you live from Woodland Grange, a conference and hotel venue in the Midlands. We now welcome Jo Britton to the Root Cause Analysis podcast. Jo is the director at Pace Development. Welcome, Jo. How are you doing?
Nice to see you. I'm really well, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much for giving up your time and how busy you are.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. It's good to see you.
No problem. You like the facilities we've got here?
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, awesome, brilliant. Right, would you mind telling us, I've briefly introduced you, would you mind telling us about yourself and what you do, please?
Well, just to give you a bit of context, because this is all about leadership, isn't it? This episode.
Yeah.
So I've held leadership positions in industry and burned myself out, and this is relevant because leadership's difficult, and it's relevant to this episode as well and what I didn't now do. So I am a neurosculpting and neuroleadership coach, trainer and facilitator, and that all sounds really grand.
It does, yeah.
What it actually means though is being able to apply brain-based approaches to help improve either your own personal or team performance, which actually impacts on the business as well. And the reason that I got into doing what I do now is having burned myself out. It was no coincidence, when you're a busy leader, that we do burn ourselves out because we're running on patterns of particular behaviour. And sometimes those patterns of behaviour are really empowering and they're great, and some of them are disempowering, not so good for us, and can cause all sorts of issues in your brain and your body. And so I turned to neuroscience really to help myself. And that's why I do the work that I do now, because I think it's incredibly important that we're aware as leaders on what we're taking on and how we are navigating the world, and also how that then affects the people that we lead.
Okay. It sounds really interesting, and we're going to get into that in this episode. I think just worth saying that it's important in any leadership role, but particularly, in my opinion anyway, with EHS leaders at any level. We're trying to influence other people, but also, as you've alluded to there, look after ourselves. So I think this is going to be really useful for our listeners, viewers who are EHS leaders.
Yeah,
so,
it's particularly important for EHS leaders, because what you're trying to do is change behaviour and culture.
Yeah.
And we'll probably talk about this during the episode today, but brains don't like change. Brains are wired for support, comfort and predictability. And so you've got a really tough job as an EHS leader, because often you're on your own as well, actually trying to drive that behavioural change and sustain it, that agenda as well. And often I know that you come up against difficulties around getting that engagement and budget and resources to sustain it. Often it's, we do the bare minimum for compliance, or we do it from a safety point of view and less so from a health point of view. Yeah. And actually, if you really want to drive business performance, it's how you get the most from this, which is where this application of neuroleadership and neuroscience is a massive tool for you, not just yourself, but actually to demonstrate benefits of the business as well.
Yeah, and I think, particularly with EHS, in a lot of leadership roles, you've got really solid backing. If you think about finance, you've got really solid backing. We've got to hit these targets. Yeah. In EHS, it's often a harder sell. I mean, we know there are targets and reasons there, really good ones, but sometimes it's a difficult message anyway. Right?
It is a difficult one.
And then we've got to think about how we actually influence people. So, can you tell us a bit? I know we've talked about this many times, but can you tell us a bit more about leadership and perhaps why you think the conventional wisdom on leadership's wrong? That might be a controversial thing to say.
I know you've asked me that for a reason, because I know you've heard me talk about. I've got some quite strong views particularly around leadership development and how we develop leadership capability in organisations. So I'll talk really broadly, but also we'll hone in on EHS as well, and how this will be helpful. There's a lot of conventional wisdom around how we traditionally develop leaders, and you might recognise this yourself, and it's certainly been my experience. What conventional wisdom says is we need to be thorough and complete, and what tends to happen is we'll get some development on the job, or we might get some training and development through a programme or a course. And when, it's certainly been my experience in the past, you'll learn about different theories of leadership. And the last time I checked on this, I gave up at 17. There were 17 different types of leadership theory.
Right.
Okay. So you're kind of learning how to compare and contrast this. I don't know if this is familiar with you, but this was my route into leadership training and development. And then you'll learn things like, well, what makes a great leader? What are the traits and what are the qualities? And there'll be a massive long list of those things. And it'll probably be things like, well, you're visionary, or you've got to inspire other people, you've got to win hearts and minds, you've got to be creative, collaborative, you've got to be good at making decisions quickly. There's a whole list of all of these things. And you kind of think, actually, when you're on the job and you're leading, you're really, really busy. That's like a thinking-based, what I'd call a top-down approach to developing your leadership capability. You're really busy, something happens, you really need to step into that leadership. Or day to day, you're busy having to try and plan ahead and think strategy and translate that into action, and you're back-to-back meetings and someone's saying we need to improve productivity, In those moments, you're not thinking, which is the leadership theory that I need here? Which is the trait or behaviour that I need to demonstrate here? You're not, you're just doing, right? And so, really, we're making leadership really complicated. I mean, if you just Google what is leadership, you will get billions of definitions.
I've done it.
You've done it, yeah. And we just make it really, really complicated. And then we wonder why we find ourselves feeling frustrated as leaders, or we get frustrated with one another, or our team are not on board with things, or it's difficult to influence people. What really needs to happen is something different. And the work that I do with engineering and manufacturing companies particularly is all about taking a bottom-up approach, and this is really different. Let me give you some examples.
Yeah, please.
Maybe play along with me on this one, will you?
Let's see what happens.
Okay.
All right.
What I want you to do, first of all, so that I can illustrate this, is I want you to think about, without giving it away, a rubbish boss, maybe, that you've had and you're laughing at.
We're going to keep names out of this,
We'll keep names out of it, yeah.
I've never had one.
You've never had a rubbish boss. You're really lucky.
Joking, of course.
Joking, of course, yeah. So if you ever think about you've had a rubbish boss, and actually if you were to just close your eyes for one moment right now and think about this, go on, do that.
Okay.
Think about this rubbish boss.
I'm doing it, yeah.
Maybe think about an issue or a situation.
I've got it.
They handled it really badly.
Yeah. Terrible. Mm-hmm.
What I want you to notice now is just scan your body for a moment.
Yeah.
And I wonder what you notice. What do you notice going on maybe in your chest or in your stomach?
Yeah. Breathing's changed a little bit. I've gone a bit, shoulders
contracted.
Not visual, but I can feel it. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Open your eyes for me.
Okay.
Just shake your body off for now. We don't want to hold on to that kind of thought or that tension. Okay. What this illustrates actually is leaders that are not great leaders tend to affect us negatively, and that affects the body. So you've just thought of a situation and a leader, and you said you felt your heart race a little bit, or your chest.
Yeah, breathing changed.
Your breathing changed,
sure,
so more shallow probably.
Yeah.
Contracted muscles, you said. I actually physically noticed your shoulders go like that. I mean, most of us, we do sit there like that, like kind of like our shoulders up to our ears, don't we? And so leaders that affect us negatively, for me, those have been times where I've not been heard or seen, or I've been negated if I've given an idea and it's been dismissed, or I've not been able to speak up in a meeting or whatever. I felt things like that, contraction in my body, maybe tight muscles. For me, it's usually a bit queasy in my stomach. Or you can get really frustrated and angry, can't you, at times? You're
definitely.
Like, your blood's boiling or whatever.
And there's a lot of external other things going on as well, and that can drive how you feel. But it is triggered by that sort of, poor leadership, whatever you want to call it.
And so this is actually playing out in the body, right? This is our nervous system responding. Behaviourally, it may mean, I can't do this, I won't do it, this is too hard, we don't like change, we're not going to, like these sorts of what we would see as negative behavioural consequences of poor leadership? What I would say is limited leadership.
Okay.
It's a nervous system response, so we'll come on to that in a moment. Whereas if you were to think about a really great boss you had, a really great leader, or somebody in your life, that affects us differently, that affects us more positively. So when I think about a leader that's been really great for me, what I've then felt is great energy, but this mixture between great energy but also calmness and at ease as well. I've felt motivated, I've felt like anything's possible.
Yeah.
That correlates to a better nervous system response. It correlates to a behaviour which is, I can do this.
Yeah.
This is a great idea. We should all be on board with it.
Yeah.
This is, for me, is limitless leadership.
Yeah.
Now, just by that example, I've not learned any leadership theory there. I've not thought in any single moment that, which is the leadership theory that I need to apply there? I've not thought about what are all the qualities and traits. They've been automatically accessible to me, and this is what neuroleadership is about.
Okay. Do you think that is? I'm just interested because that all makes sense, right? You know, do you think almost it's common sense? You know, and forget all these leadership models because no one can remember them all. They're all different. Is there an amount of just common sense and just being like a real person sort of approach there? Do you think or not?
There is slightly. I'd say it's slightly more than that. I'd say it's because actually humans navigate the world through our brains and nervous systems.
Okay.
And in leadership development, it's catching up a little bit now, but certainly we have little knowledge and experience ourselves of our brains and bodies and how they react. Therefore, as leaders, we are missing the most crucial bit of information.
Yeah.
When you start to do this and you start to learn how your brain and body is reacting to certain things in the world, for me, this changes, just to add to another definition of leadership, for me, leadership is about your sense of internal navigation and how you express that into the outer world.
Yeah. And I suppose as you learn more about this, you can then see, you can think to yourself, oh yeah, that's why that happened, or that's why I felt like that. So it's putting these things just happen to you, but it's putting a framework around that.
Absolutely, it gives you awareness, but not only does it give you self-awareness, you actually start to notice it in other people. And there are some really cool techniques we can go on to that are going to help you notice these things in yourself and how they affect your leadership, but then notice how you impact others with it as well.
Okay, so we will go on to that now. I mean, tell us about how, having said all of that, how leaders, EHS leaders and otherwise, how can they utilise what can they do to help themselves and, as you said there, help others that they're leading? You know, what are some practical things that they can
Practical
do?
tips, right. Let's talk about brain and body, and let's add to this example of this feeling of contraction and what happens, and therefore what tools and techniques we can use. So first of all, awareness first is everything. So the first tip is to kind of think about what are the things that maybe trigger a nervous system response or reaction in me that is not an empowering one. So it's a contracted one.
Okay.
So I don't know what those things might be for you, Chris, but I gave an example before. I'm in a meeting and I feel like my idea has been dismissed, or I've been negated, or I don't feel like I've been able to speak up. And so for me, that has gone, I've got really angry. You don't, my opinion doesn't matter, whatever. Okay. We call this being scarfed. We'll come on to what that means in a moment. So there'll be a whole range of things that trigger an emotional reaction in you, which might send you into fight or flight, or even a freeze response. So if you think about your brain is, here's the brain.
Okay.
2 hemispheres of the brain. Okay. Your brain is a prediction machine. All it wants to do is know what it needs to do next to satisfy that prediction. So as human beings, we actually navigate the world through prediction scripts, and we have loads of those scripts. anything that, you know, if you think about when you're a baby, you don't really have many because you're learning things all the time, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So you learn if you're hungry that you cry and you get fed. Prediction script, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Until you learn how to talk, and then you ask, I'm hungry, you know, you say, I'm hungry,
Great
I've got food.
sense so far, yeah.
You learn how to tie a shoelace. You learn how to pick up a glass. Can you imagine if every day you had to relearn that? That would be a nightmare, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Groundhog Day. This is called neuroplasticity, okay?
Okay.
Neuroplasticity is science's term for the way that we learn things. Neuroplasticity means that we create patterns and scripts that we operate from. But underpinning all of that is our base operating system. So if you think like your nervous system is the base operating system for all of this, think about a computer's operating system, and it directs like what it needs to do to all of the components. Your nervous system's doing that as well. When you feel you've been triggered in a way that means your behaviour is disempowering, or maybe it means that you feel stressed or anxious, what happens? You become midbrain dominant. So if you were to just do this right now,
Okay. Yeah.
just above your ears, if you press right in, like almost as if you went through your skull in the middle.
Okay.
You're in the midbrain.
Right.
Midbrain. You can put your hands down now.
Okay. Excellent.
Midbrain is your ancient brain. It's a life-saving gift when we need it. Right.
Okay.
The fight-flight system is a life-saving gift when we need it. If there's a car hurtling towards you and you need to mobilise and get out of the way, you absolutely want midbrain sending cortisol and adrenaline around your body to mobilise and run out of the way. What you don't want to be doing is thinking, should I go left, should I go right?
Right.
Okay. So life-saving gift
It's
when
like
you need
people
it.
say you just act, you don't think.
Act. You just
instinct,
act.
sort of. Okay.
Life-saving gift when we need it, but also can be inappropriate at times. This is what causes our stress
Okay.
response, which many of us are living in all of the time. I nickname that part of your brain your Frankenstein brain. Okay? Frankenstein roaming around. Really important when we need him, but actually, most of the time, with these sort of thoughts that we have, or these situations that are going on, they're not life-threatening in the moment, truly, but the brain perceives them to be, so it acts accordingly. Doesn't know the difference between real threat and imagined or perceived threat.
Okay.
So if that leader is saying to me something or not letting me speak, and I feel like I'm triggered by that, and I get angry maybe as a result of it, then my body is going to go into midbrain dominance, fight-flight mode, or freeze. Sometimes that might mean somebody withdraws from a meeting or whatever that is, and I've got Frankenstein rolling around.
Okay.
That doesn't correlate. Again, that correlates to what we were talking about earlier, which is contracted body, because adrenaline and cortisol means that I need to move vital resources to muscle masses to help me fight or flee. Okay, so I'm in a stress-based threat response. Many of us in leadership positions, and many of us generally actually, are living in this day-to-day state of stress arousal. So sympathetic arousal in the nervous system. I've just been running a poll actually across my social platforms, and I asked the question, how often do you feel stressed? 55% have said every day. Another 30% have said at least once a week. 85% of us are feeling in this Frankenstein state either every day or at least once a week. This is not good for us. It's not good for the brain or body. We don't need to be in that state. It's supposed to be temporary. What we really need to be in to be an effective, expansive leader is in the front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. That part of the brain gives rise to all our best self qualities. So remember those traits we talked about, the leadership traits. Compassion, empathy, logic, creativity, problem solving, great decision making, motivation, goal setting and achievement are all a product of the front of the brain here. I nickname that part your Einstein genius brain. Okay. So the reason this is really important and how we can, as leaders, actually, you talked about is it being common sense? It kind of is, but leadership really is about recognising when you're in
Right,
midbrain dominance, and it is not helping you, and it's not helping others, it's not helping you collaborate, it's not helping you influence and persuade, it's not helping you lead change, it's not helping you get people on board, and how you can flip into Einstein genius brain. Okay, so it's a seesaw effect. If you think about these two characters, there's an inverse relationship between these two characters. If you are midbrain dominant, Frankenstein dominant, you are at the top of the seesaw. Therefore, this part of the brain, Einstein, has come offline. You're not in both parts of the brain at the same time. Whereas what we want to do is put Einstein at the top of the seesaw. So you asked loads and loads of context like you ask, how do we move the seesaw, really, is what you're asking. Think about your nervous system then being on a spectrum. So if you think about a spectrum, it'd be handy if let's use him this way. Okay. That incident that triggers you into sympathetic arousal. So say this side, stress-based arousal, response, fight or flight. One side of the spectrum. This side, parasympathetic response in the nervous system. This is more your freeze response. And let's just think the middle is rest and digest. So the nervous system goes in 4 directions: fight, flight, freeze, homeostasis, rest and digest. So awareness as to what are the situations or issues that will send me in a direction, either parasympathetic where I freeze or hyper-aroused sympathetic, that's not going to be good for me. That means my behaviour is not going to be good, or I'm not going to feel very good, or I'm going to burn myself out. Make a note of those things. And then what are the tools that I can use to recognise when I'm moving that way to bring me back to rest and digest? Rest and digest is Einstein's zone. Okay? So there are some simple things. Something that works for both sides of the equation is something called vagal toning, because the vagus nerve is the base operating system here. And scientists have now discovered that those that have high vagal tone have a much easier way of navigating through stressful situations with a bit more grace and coming out the other side without burning themselves out than those that have low vagal tone. So I need you to join in with me now. Okay. We're going to do some vagal techniques, vagal toning.
I've been practicing this.
You've been practicing because we've done these before, haven't we? As well. Okay. The first one is neurogenic tremors or vigorous body shakes. Okay. So you can do this standing up. If we stand up, actually, and you can just start to, if you bend your knees a little bit, and you just start to bounce a little bit, and then just start to shake slowly to begin with. And then you can increase the speed.
I didn't think I'd been in this morning.
You didn't. And then you can shake your head. And then what I really want you to hear is a big...
Okay.
Very physiological sigh. Okay, and then you can sort of gently come back to it. Okay. So the reason this works is that if you've ever seen an animal under threat in the wild, maybe it's been chased and then that threat disappears, the animal will shake itself out. It's dissipating and discharging stress. So actually, you can just vagal tone. There are other ways that you can vagal tone because the vagus nerve runs from base stem of the brainstem all the way, it's called the vagus nerve because it's the wandering nerve. Vagus in Latin is wandering, the wandering nerve. It wanders everywhere. So it kind of comes down here, out through here, down through your chest and into your stomach, and it's branched. It's called a nerve, but it's actually a bundle of nerves that's branched out. It has a front side ventral vagal, which we learn to program as from birth. It responds to social cues, and this is how we kind of navigate things, right? And we learn things. Has backside called the dorsal vagal. Think about a fin, dorsal fin. Okay, that's pre-programmed from birth. There's a situation. and you go into a stress response and you haven't got the coping strategies, it will shut you down. Fainting is a good example of a dorsal, extreme parasympathetic response. I can't cope in that moment. Body takes over, shut down mode. Okay. So we can tone this vagus nerve, and why there are lots of different activities we can do to tone the vagus nerve is where it travels. So actually here, between, you can try this with me right now, between your eyebrows, if you massage that gently.
Yeah.
This one I love, it really soothes me, is tips of your ears. If you to squeeze them over like that, just really gently.
Okay.
You can kind of massage or even just gently move your fingers across here. Mm-hmm. Anything that stimulates here.
Yeah.
Humming. Singing happy birthday to you.
I'm not going to see that.
Or even gargling with water stimulates the vagus. So there are loads of different ways that we can do that. So these are simple things, they're free, that you can be doing every single day to condition the nervous system towards adaptability and resilience, because the brain's adaptable. Neuroplasticity is it's adapting to a new structure every time it learns something, the brain, okay? So what we can do is make and tone our vagus nerve, and meaning our nervous system becomes more adaptable and more resilient, because a more adaptable and resilient nervous system means a more adaptable and resilient brain, and vice versa. Okay, so that's number one. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Number two, if we are the body shake works both sides of the equation on this, by the way. Withdrawn, parasympathetic, or sympathetic, kind of highly agitated stress arousal there. But breathing helps as well. But there are two different ways to breathe. If you are really amped up, you know, people say, "Oh, take a breath," don't they?
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
for goodness sake, calm down, take a breath, yeah?
Deep breaths, yeah.
Deep breaths. However, sometimes a deep breath, if you are really highly aroused and highly charged, a deep breath sometimes can make you feel worse. So if I'm like that, and someone says, "Breathe, take a deep breath in," I go, I can't actually breathe in, it makes me feel worse. So if you're really amped up, then start with an out breath. So this is like putting your foot on the gas of the brake of your nervous system.
Okay.
And then in. So longer exhale and a shorter inhale. If you are really withdrawn, so you see it, and I've had this before, where I burnt myself out so much that I withdrew, became quite depressed, you know, like couldn't get out of bed, not motivated. You actually need to kickstart your nervous system there. Kickstarting it, therefore, would be in breaths.
Right, okay.
Yeah? Okay? Yeah. So it's really crucial, actually, which breath you think about. So recognising, scanning your body, you know, is my breathing fast at the moment? If I'm breathing fast, that's probably sympathetic arousal. Yeah, I'm not rest and digest. If I'm feeling in my stomach a bit queasy, or I've got stomach ache, probably sympathetic arousal, because digestion goes offline when you're in that stress response. Your body doesn't need to digest food to run away and save your life. Okay. So those two things actually just help leaders so much, because when you're then able to move back to homeostasis, you're able to flip into Einstein genius. And we all have these leadership qualities within us and these traits, our ability to be compassionate and empathetic, our ability to be motivated, they're all within us. They're all in this part of the brain, but we only access it when we're in frontal brain, and therefore that's how we need to learn. How can I condition my nervous system and be able to flip the seesaw back into the front of the brain? So automatically in a situation, you're able to deal with it in your best leadership way, your best leadership qualities.
Okay. And so we've talked quite a bit of detail about about how the science, if you like, works. And I can imagine people maybe listening or watching and thinking to themselves, well, you know, it's all very scientific and it's complicated and here's a new strategy, you know, does it really have an impact, etc. Now, you know, I will ask you a question in a second, but from my point of view, you know, going back to I won't go into the details, but going back to the example I was thinking of when I had my eyes closed. I mean, a number of years ago, the culture we had there in an organisation I was in was, no one's view is important. You've got this person that's a leader, and they're not really leading. They're just going off doing their own thing, not involving other people, or all of that sort of stuff. And you think, why was that? And it perhaps was because of how they were being led or managed, and they're, just get on with the job. And they're I'm guessing, but maybe we're always in that Frankenstein type mode. But I didn't know this then, but from talking to you, I know this. That just gets passed on to everyone else. So what I would say is this stuff is real, and it does. Anyone listening or watching thinks about it. They've all got an example, and you can really see it happening. So that's my view or opinion. If you go into organisations and talk about this all the time, have you got sort of examples of where you've actually made change, things have worked? What's happened? Tell us a bit about that.
Loads of examples.
Okay.
Yeah, some really tangible ones, and also in engineering and manufacturing companies, which. I'll be honest with you, I've probably been, are at times the most cynical about this stuff, right?
Okay.
Which is great.
That.
Yeah, you can, right? But it's great because if you can get people on board actually applying this and they see a result, it really changes. And I have feedback from clients that say I was like your biggest cynic, really, but this really works. The direct effect of some of this work, and this has only been within 18 contact hours with leadership teams, has been in one manufacturer unlocking almost £3 million worth of new sales revenue. Okay. In another, a £1.5 million purchasing saving. Improvement in the culture of things, i.e. People, from situations and culture where lots of people were kind of finger pointing and blaming, weren't collaborating, there was miscommunication, silo working. Actually, really, what really happened there was that the company then had high attrition, high sickness absence, reflected in really poor Glassdoor reviews, so found it difficult to attract good talent that they need. And we know that in engineering and manufacturing, good talent is hard to come by. That skill, and once it leaves the industry, it tends to leave and go to other industries. So all those problems actually being solved. From a health and safety point of view, on the agenda there, we talked about what you're actually doing is driving behavioural change, but we're also driving the health benefits. So when people are healthy and they're productive and they're not burning out and they're collaborating well and they're able to make decisions really well and they're engaged and they're in the Einstein brain more times than they're in the Frankenstein brain, that has a net effect on good culture, good safety culture, but also some of these things we're talking about, like sickness, absence, attrition, from a health point of view as well. So there are tangible things, and what happens is this kind of stuff becomes the culture because we teach it talked about the neuroscience, but actually you teach it with these characters, right? People get it, it's easy to understand, and we teach a model that is so easy to grasp. SCARF, we were talking about before. So 5 domains of the brain, if they feel under threat or perceived to be under threat, will trigger the Frankenstein response. And so these are things like, if I perceive my status is being threatened, then I'm likely to feel like, go into fight, flight mode or freeze mode. Status in health and safety, change, what might that mean, Chris?
Yeah, so it might be that, I think I'm, I have a lot of influence, I can put forward ideas. You know, near misses is an example we always use. You know, my status is I'm valued by the organisation, I can suggest things, I can tell you what's going wrong, and I know you'll do something about it. If that isn't the case, then my status in my head, I'm sort of thinking, well, I'm not that important anymore, you know, and I'm just not going to tell you anything. It blocks that me coming forward, being proactive, telling you stuff.
Exactly, and you want in all employees to actually have the mindset to feel safe to do that. So, and this is a bit, you know, it's kind of compatible with the concept around psychological safety, right? When we feel safe, we're an Einstein brain. It's a cultural thing. So, getting people to understand things like when your status might be triggered when we don't feel certain about things. So, you know, if we've not got a plan for something, people go, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't feel certain, triggers that stress response. If I don't feel like I've got autonomy, you know, like my ideas don't matter, or I'm not able to get on with doing the job, I feel micromanaged, or whatever that might look like in health and safety. Relatedness, if I don't feel like you relate to me, like you don't get me. You don't get how difficult it is in manufacturing.
Right.
Because I've got to get product out the door, and you're coming along and you're auditing me on these sorts of things, and the business is only appreciating the profit or the productivity number. You know, that is a relatedness threat, both to the health, safety and health leader, but also to the individual that is being asked to change their behaviour, right? Because there's inconsistency. It's going to make me go Frankenstein-brained. And fairness, if I think things are unfair. So I've walked around many factories at times where, even now where I go around, and there's, you know, obviously PPE policy, and there's always somebody who's not adhering to that, and yet they don't get picked up, you know? And it's like, well, how is that fair? He or she's not wearing it, so why should we do it?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of examples that, you know, just a different level of person, you know, the director will come down and, you know, he or she doesn't have to wear it.
Exactly.
You know, and it switches everyone up. So I think, you know, people listening or watching to this might have never heard of SCARF before, but, you know, when I first knew about it, you told me about it quite a while ago, you immediately think, yeah, you know, I get that. You know, things that impact my status affect me negatively, whatever that means. You know, I go into, you know, Frankenstein mode, as you've talked about, and I get very angry internally, probably. People are different, but I'm definitely not in the Einstein thinking, being proactive, coming up with solutions. You know? And so that's just normal. Obviously it's science, you know. So that's because my status has been challenged. And some of the, not to go through every letter, but, you know, some of the other stuff you mentioned there, the autonomy, right? You know, I think it's incredibly powerful if someone suggests something and says we should do this. Get them involved in the solution. I'm not a fan of saying, okay, go and make it happen then, you know, they need support, but allowing them to get involved in what's the solution, you know.
Bringing forward ideas.
And then, you know, fairness, we're all, you know, we're all aware of that. You know, if someone has been treated differently to you is going to have a negative impact on you. But, you know, we've put that into a model, you know, SCARF. But a lot of it, it's not common sense, okay, but a lot of it is just normal human stuff. Why do people, in your opinion, why does that go out the window? Why do people ignore it, don't do it? Because it's, you know.
Because it takes practice to change a behaviour, right? So behaviour are habits, right? And the brain doesn't know the difference between a good habit or a bad habit. It's just a neural pattern, right?
Just a habit, right?
Yeah. So behaviours are patterns, okay? So if for many years we've exercised a certain pattern around behavioural, like safety or health in the workplace, we've not had to do certain things or whatever, that becomes our default, right? So if somebody comes along making change, that's actually changing our behaviour, can be a status threat. I've always done this, you know, I've always done it this way or whatever, and that can that can do that. So we have to practice. Now, we have a gift, and that is called neuroplasticity, as I mentioned earlier. We can get to self-direct neuroplasticity in the brain to help us change behaviours, whether those are our own individual ones, like some of my patterns around anxious thinking or stress or worry or those sorts of things are actually patterns that I'm living with because it's fast, easy and efficient for me to be that way. It's comfortable. It might not be good for me, but it's what my brain knows how to do, so it's default, so it will follow that pattern. It's the prediction. Yeah. So we have to work quite hard as individuals. One, as I said, awareness, recognise what's the pattern that's not helping here, and then using some tools to help us change the pattern. And that's where you talked about, I was saying a neurosculpting facilitator. That is actually what neurosculpting is about. It's about using all of your brain, quieting down midbrain, activating front of the brain, telling the brain's different stories to release disempowering patterns or create really good ones for us as well by toggling between the brain hemispheres in the way left and right hemisphere respond to information, and actually anchoring that into the nervous system in the brain and practicing that so that becomes default.
So at a real, simple level for me, because of external influences, maybe, you go into that Frankenstein mode, but you as an individual have the power then to get, if you recognise that, and that's important, you then have the power to get yourself out of that. You can do that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
So you were saying, why is it then that, we know what we need to do and yet we might still default to an unhelpful behaviour or pattern, and that's because we practiced that pattern like many, many times. And it'll happen a lot with clients where, okay, we've been through the tools now, and then what they'll do is they'll go, oh, I still went Frankenstein-like, I didn't use my tools. Okay. That's progress because you're now aware. And so it takes a lot of practice and commitment to do it, but it is absolutely possible to change those patterns. And when you here's the power with it with culture in an organisation, when you get everybody understanding this stuff, quite simple, in a simple way, you understand Dr. David Rock's SCARF model, and you start looking and identifying in the organisation, how am I being scarfed, but how am I scarfing other people? And how can I use SCARF in a proactive way? Because the reverse is true. If I perceive an elevation in my status, then I'm going to be like Einstein-like. So you can use it that way as well. And you just get everybody doing that really well. Guess what? The culture changes because that becomes the culture. And that's how we've got results really quickly with just 18 hours of kind of contact time with leaders to the sorts of results that I mentioned earlier. It's interesting because when we talk about safety culture, a big thing for Make UK and how we support our members is examining safety culture and changing it, helping them to change it. We think it's really important. I mean, obviously, right? What you're talking about, and some of the drivers there are, what we will often say is we need to get leaders, so real senior leaders in organisations, to actually care about their employees, because if they care about their employees, then everything follows from that, and you have a good safety culture. And that's a rather simplistic view, just the headlines there. But actually, what you're talking about is people sort of know this stuff already, sort of. They can certainly see these things that have been done to them or they've done and the impact it's had. That's what I mean by they know them. They might not know why. So just from doing, from doing, in that example, 18 hours of training, like workshops, just from raising the awareness of these things in an organisation, I suppose that hopefully drives the right behaviours. People are thinking, I'm in Frankenstein mode, I know that's bad and this is why, this is how I get out of that. I mean, is that what happens? Yeah, definitely does. And actually starting with, what we have to do is start with ourselves. So if we can work with a senior leadership team first, we have to take care of ourselves first. It's the old cliche about you have to be able to put your own oxygen mask on first, right? Before you go and save anybody else and put theirs on, right? And we forget that as leaders. We kind of think that we have to be showing up every day as the big, strong, bold leader. And actually, I work with so many leaders, and it's a lonely place to be in that leadership position, and you're a human being as a leader as well. So there'll be things that affect you negatively. When you understand that, because you're leading the most important group of leaders is yourself, right? So you have to be able to lead yourself before you can lead other people. So when you do that work collectively as a senior team, or even individually one-to-one, whatever it is that the default patterns are that you have, without getting into the kind of psychotherapy sort of side of things, that's actually what we're working with. So when you've got, it's really empowering for those people. And then you've got a common language. That's what really drives the change, because it's quite easy to talk about in a non-confrontational way. You know, a lot of people won't say, you've really hacked me off there. But what they might start saying is, that was a bit scarfy.
Yeah.
You know, and so it feels less confrontational. People understand what that means.
It's made it just a set of facts. You know, it's just a
just an accessible tool that people feel quite safe to use and talk about.
So is it quite important in an organisation? You go into different organisations and deliver programmes around this sort of stuff. Is it quite important that you train the right level of people? I would imagine if you just train the very top and no one else knows anything, then that sort of fails. And quite often, in health and safety, we'll get senior leaders saying, "Can you just come in and train the production supervisors?" And that's it. Yeah. You've got to get. I mean, what's your view on that? You've got to get the right level and it flows down?
100%, and that would be an ideal world. But I tell you what can happen in reality, because I'll get the same often. So I'll often get, we need some middle managers with some management and leadership. Like, they're the problem kind of thing, right? Of course, and so sometimes we'll start there, but usually I'll ask the question of the senior leadership team, what do you want the outcome of this to be? And so many people don't really know what it is. And so what I often say to them is, I'll tell you what one of the outcomes will definitely be, and that is be prepared to be challenged. Because they're going to learn some stuff that you've not had exposure to, and they're going to be more challenging of you. So you need to be ready for that, and you don't actually want to feel like you're on the back foot. And that does happen in practice, and they get curious, which is great actually, because then we'll say, well, you don't need the whole programme maybe that the middle managers need, but you need a version of this so that everybody's on the same page, so that you can have really good conversations, discussions, solve problems together, using this common framework and language. And that's when the penny drops a bit. So it'll probably be a little bit like when you're doing the health and safety work in companies, probably like the board will need a lighter touch version of something. Different kind of touch points in organisations will need something else as well.
Yeah, it's different. But what is the same is this, if I make it, about health and safety, EHS at this point, what is the same is that there will be a common thread, which is, people are important, the environment's important, we've got to look after them. And so if everyone's on the same page with that, it just it flows through.
It does,
But I can imagine in that example, sort of example there you're talking about, you just train middle managers, they'll then be talking, hopefully they'll feel quite open to saying to senior people, I felt a bit scarfed or whatever the phrase might be.
They do.
And if the senior leaders haven't had the training,
they don't know what it's about.
They don't know what it's about, and you can imagine how they'd react.
And actually, they feel a bit scarfed then, because they're on the back foot.
But they don't even know what it is.
Yeah, because I've not got the knowledge. Exactly that. It's like, it's a bit of a status threat to them, because what are they talking about? Is it, So I would always advise, because this stuff doesn't take a long time to do. It's not a huge investment, but the ripple effect is huge across an organisation. And what's really nice is, so many of the teams then will say, I started my meetings with vagal toning, or, we talk about, how are we going to get in our Einstein brain today? And that's like, because they've been on the development, they're passing it on because it's easy. It's easy to pass on.
Definitely, And I'll tell you what else is easy as well. When you're in a meeting and that, let's say, I'm making this up, but let's say some people in your organisation have had the training, let's call it that, and some people haven't. And you go to a meeting and you see it might be quite a real senior leader here leading a meeting, usually on Teams these days, and you can sort of tick off the negative things that are happening, and you can see, even though it's on Teams, you can see how it's affecting people.
Yeah.
And you think, well, if you'd had that training, and understood how that works, this could have gone so much better.
You can frame it so much differently. Like I was saying, usually what's happening is we're not conscious of this, so we are scarfing people, right? And we don't quite realise. But actually, with a bit of planning, you can think, if I want to affect a change here, I can make people feel like their status is elevated. I can make them feel certain about things, because actually we can never be certain about things as leaders. But what we can be, which is a good substitute, is be really clear.
Yeah.
And so, which is why we talk about setting clear goals and objectives. That's the reason, because when that's clear, we feel a sense of safety. So you can use it that way to do that. And it's been really interesting, because sometimes I'll set homework. If I do this work one-on-one with leaders, I'll set homework. That's a really great example of a piece of homework that I would set, So they have to be, if they're running a meeting, they have to be conscious of where every time they might have scarfed somebody. So they're looking for that as well, and then they're reflecting on it.
Yeah,
and it's
and it becomes
powerful.
really obvious. I mean, I've been there, and it becomes really obvious as well. Once you know what you're looking for, and also on a more positive note, you can do something about it. If you're that leader in the meeting, you know what scarfing is. You can do something about it, like you said there, and have a plan already about what I'm going to do. And
exactly.
I know I'm going to announce this thing that isn't going to be popular, and I know why, and I know how they're going to feel about it roughly. I've already got some answers, and I've already thought about how we address that. The message isn't changing, but I've at least realised the impact and do something.
100%, and it's so practical, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not difficult. It really isn't. And also, you see the benefits of. It's like the behaviours you talked about. I see the benefits of doing it, so I keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. Really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Jo, we could have another whole
another hour.
series of hours at least, or another episode or something. But I found it really useful. I think our listeners and viewers would have also found this useful. If people want to know more about all the subjects you've talked about today, how do they sort of follow you along? How do they sort of get in touch?
Well, the easiest way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. So Jo Britton on LinkedIn, give me a follow or send me a connection request. I've got loads of tools and resources that I offer for free, because part of my mission, I have a greater mission, which is all about changing the world one brain and mind at a time, so that it's a better place. And I think we need that at the moment, at the time of filming this. Please come and just connect with me, give me a follow.
Sorry, I've just thought of another question. One of your objectives last time we spoke at some point in the past was you're going to influence a certain number of people.
Yes, well, I started with, I set a goal last year. In the 12 months, it was to help 1,000 people.
Right. Okay.
But by March time, I'd already done about 1,500, so I stretched it.
Okay.
So it was about 2,500 people last year.
Yeah.
Just to apply this stuff.
Impacting something.
Impact,
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, great to see you again.
Lovely to see you again. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and I'll see you on the next one.